everybody, welcome into this week's Ask Mike. Hope you had a good holiday. Hope you enjoyed it. Watched some good college football, including the bowl game that Arkansas had. Good to be with you, Mike Irwin. Another fresh set of questions for us, and I'm sure a lot of it has to do with that bowl game. So we'll jump right in because, you know, who knows what all you guys have to say this week. Our first question is from Spike Hog, who asked, do you feel vindicated after defending this game for those who said there was no interest in it and it shouldn't be played? The team did win, but no way would I pay to watch this in person.
You know, just from the question, I just get the impression that he's basically saying, well, you may feel vindicated that you defended the game, but I still think the game was terrible. I wouldn't go watch it in person. And this was nothing about what I said. But when this first came up and people were saying on the internet that in this day and age of college playoffs anyway, there's no point in these 6 and 6 team bowl games, lower level bowl games. There's too many of them, get rid of them. And I made the point that it isn't always about the fans, that players like to play in bowl games. They work all year long. And when you do that, you don't like for the season to suddenly be over and there's just nothing to it. So even if it's a lower level bowl game, they get to play another game. Some of these younger players get a chance to play, which we saw. It's an early start on next year because you get kind of a mini spring football thing with a couple of weeks that you're able to work out. And then you have a good time. I've never seen a bowl in which the players didn't have a good time. It may not be a great place for some fans depending on what goes on. But most bowls do a good job of making sure the players have a lot of activities and it's fun. And so I was just saying, don't deny them what they want to do, which is they play football to play football. And you telling them they shouldn't play a game, it's stupid. If you don't like the game, if you think it's a bad bowl game, don't watch it. But a few fans will enjoy it. The attendance wasn't real good, 35,000 or whatever, and how many of those were Razorback fans? 25?
Most of them.
Most of them, okay, so 30.
It was still hard to tell because the two reds,
right,
you look close in,
but
which logo was on
30,000
their chest.
maybe.
Yeah.
And that's not a great attendance for a Liberty Bowl this close to Arkansas, probably the lowest attended game, so that reflects the fact that not a lot of fans were fired up about this bowl game. But I do think the fact that they won made some people happy, at least gives you something to think about and have a good attitude about until football starts again. So that's all.
Yeah, both head coaches were asked about this at the end of their press conferences on Thursday before the game, and both said absolutely they're huge. And they're big for all of the reasons you mentioned, but then maybe what some fans might not be thinking of, like you said, don't tell me that Carmona and Cam Ball did not have a blast shooting free throws at the Memphis Grizzlies game.
Right.
Having a great time at Dave & Buster's, just enjoying themselves. And Texas Tech's head coach, he was just like, look, I had a young kid come up to me, one of my freshmen, and the bowl gifts that the bowl gives them. And he said, Coach, this is the first watch I've ever owned. They all got Liberty Bowl watches. He's like, man, this is the first watch I'd ever owned. He was so excited. And he joked, like, you're not going to want to wear that very often because you're going to want to keep it and show people it eventually down the road. But it's things like that that, again, fans don't think about. But these kids really enjoy, and on top of the practices, it's just a reward. Even the guys, and it's an interesting concept, and I don't know if you got asked about it, but I'd love your take on it, where Joey McGuire said, I let kids who played on my roster in 2024 play in the bowl game. I look at it as a reward. It is an extension of the season. So there are guys who were in the transfer portal who were playing in this game for Texas Tech. What do you think about that?
Well, it comes up in a question here.
Okay, it does. Okay, my bad. So we can talk about that. We can talk about that in a minute. But I just thought it was very fascinating. Again, you look at it as a reward.
Exactly. I don't feel vindicated. I knew I was right because I was because I wasn't talking about fans. Okay. I was talking about the players.
Yeah.
So the fact that they didn't have a big attendance there, the fact that Razorback fans may not be going ape over winning a bowl game because they're making a big deal out of Sam Pitman's won 3 straight games, and no Razorback coach has ever won 3 straight like that. I can understand why some fans aren't real excited about that, but it's not, again, my answer didn't have anything to do with the fans. It was about the players.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Razor Alex 88 says, a couple weeks ago I said that we were going to get blasted by Texas Tech. I am so glad to have been wrong. WPS forever.
Yeah, and I like this because this is a guy that doesn't have an agenda. He may have thought they were going to lose. He may not like Pitman. I don't know. But he can at least enjoy a win. And there's so many of these that can't. I mean, if you look at some of the comments about I even put up some tweets to the effect that what I liked about it, this was one of my favorite bowl games, not because it was important in the scheme of things with regard to the Razorbacks, because it was important that it established to me, showed me that there are still players out there that want to play football to play football. It's not about NIL or money or any of that. They still enjoy going out and playing the game, and they were rewarded with a win. And if you watched, and you were there, if the game went off almost immediately, so they didn't show any post-game stuff for the fans. But you guys were there, and we saw it on the internet. They celebrated out there. For instance,
winning is winning.
Eric Mateos put a picture up of all the offensive linemen and talked about how this one kid didn't even have a place to park, didn't know where to park his scooter yet. And he played a key, it was a kid from Fort Smith that played a key role in the offensive line for that game. And there's another guy that had been a walk-on 8 weeks before that, and how proud he was of all that. So I put that up, and you know what a response I got was, yeah, and there was about 12 guys in this photo. I bet most of them will be gone by next year. Come on, stop being.
You just can't be happy for a second.
Stop being cynical.
Yeah.
Look, I don't have an issue with a fan getting on the internet and saying, I don't like Sam Pitman and here's why I think he should be gone. I don't have a problem with that. You have a right to express your opinion. But if you are so agenda driven that you can't acknowledge something that's positive and let them enjoy that, you have to dump on that. I mean, the whole thing with Dazmin James. Again, a lot of people can't let that go. They got to turn it into something negative. Pitman was stupid. He should have played him. Oh, come on. Stop that. There's just no reason. I mean, this was actually a comment. I swear it was. Pittman should have played him all along instead of Andrew Armstrong because Armstrong left. I mean, first of all, Armstrong left because of the draft, not because he was a portal jumper. And secondly, he's an all-SEC performer that had, how many, 1,300 yards in receptions or something? And you say
that's like being mad at Traylon Burks for declaring for the NFL draft and then saying, we should have never played Traylon Burks. Should have never played him.
Exactly. I mean,
what?
You just, that makes no sense. But it's agenda-driven. You're so mad that you want to show that Pittman was stupid for not playing this guy. Look,
that's wild.
James may turn out to be a great player. He's off to a good start for next year, but that's one game.
Yeah.
We don't know what he's going to do.
We don't know. We have no idea what practices were like. We have no idea of any of
the explanation. Hutch wrote a pretty good article explaining it. I remembered that I didn't see anything in August camp that stood out to me about him. Yeah. The explanation was that he wasn't a good practice player, but turned out to be delivering. There are guys like that.
There's also guys, too, that just need that time to develop. And so he finally got to a point where the coaches felt ready to put him in a game. There was no, they weren't over here being like, oh, we just like C.J. Brown better than we like Dazmin James for some random reason that doesn't make any sense. They put him in when they finally felt like his development was at the right spot. And you can't sit there and then guess everything that happened up to that point.
But when you want to take a positive like that and turn it into this makes Pittman look stupid, come on, you're just agenda driven. Yeah. Give me some real reasons that you want Pittman gone. Don't give me stupid things like that where you're dumping on the success that players enjoyed.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Grant Walker says, I know it's not considered a marquee bowl, but I love the Liberty Bowl. They are always so good to the Razorbacks.
I think
they are.
It's not the best bowl. The Cotton Bowl always was. I've been to Cotton Bowl in 12, 15, 13 years in 2011, but it was always my favorite because of the way they treated the players, the media. But the truth is, some of these bowls that look glamorous, like I remember the CarQuest Bowl down in Orlando, the first time when Danny Ford, that was the worst bowl I ever went to. They didn't handle the media well. The stuff with the players was disorganized. So this is, the Liberty's Bowl's been around in Memphis since '65. That's a long time. If you sustain a bowl every year for that long, your bowl people are doing something right. Yeah. So I think the people that went seemed to have a good time. I didn't read anything on the internet. There was one lady that talked about she went to a hotel and then the reservations, they wouldn't let her in or they did something bad and she had to go to another hotel, and she was real mad at this particular hotel, which stuff like that happens. But I didn't read anything where they didn't have a good time. Beale Street can be okay. You know, go if it's not freezing, especially. It's a fun thing.
Yeah,
and you go and eat barbecue, and there's usually an NBA game there during the Liberty Bowl. I think didn't the players get to go to one?
Yeah.
You guys didn't, but they did.
Right.
And so that's a fun thing to do if you're a fan. Go there, go to an NBA game. So as bowls go, it's not terrible. It's okay. I can think of a lot of bowls that are worse.
Yeah. I just think that I think they get some deserving criticism.
Yeah.
All right, me and Armand Abbey on the same page, Mike. Some coaches are allowing transfers to play in the team's bowl game before they sign with another team. Pittman took a hard line, saying, "No way. Was it a mistake to keep players out of the bowl who might help them win?"
Well, the way he puts that, but I think he probably posted that before the game was played. So it's unnecessary. Now we know they didn't need them because they won the game. The issue is, should they do that? I don't have an issue with McGuire doing that, but here's the problem you run into. Remember, his running back, one of the best running backs in the country. And they sort of think he's going to play all the way up to even, I think, we didn't know, right? You guys didn't know even before the game, and then he didn't participate in the pregame stuff, so they sort of knew. But this guy stood over there fully able to play, dressed out, and watched his team get beat and never said, hey, I want to go in and help. That's a bad look. I wouldn't want my players exposed to that because it's almost insulting to them. But worse was the Miami guy, and you probably know his name, I forgot.
Ward.
Yeah. He goes out there just to break an NCAA record for career touchdown passes. As soon as he gets it, he hits the bench and doesn't play, and they get beat. Again,
that's not really a team player kind of mentality.
Yeah, do you want your players over there looking at that guy going, ugh? So I would much rather have what Pitman has, which is, hey, if you're with us and you're going to play and you're not leaving, you can come be with us. Now, I think if Andrew Armstrong had said, I'd like to go to the game and just be with you guys, he'd have been okay with that, but he's obviously not going to play. So you don't want him suiting up. If he's just to stand there with a uniform on, that seems kind of goofy. So I like his approach.
Yeah, but I'm curious, though, like, let's say a guy is in the portal, because those guys, like Cam Ward's going to the NFL draft. Right. So, like, he's not in the transfer portal.
Yes.
It's a little different. If a guy is in the portal and is going to play somewhere else next year,
right,
you don't think he should be able to finish out the season with his team?
No. If you're going somewhere else, good luck. Bye. Go away.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, and I say interesting. I can see where McGuire is coming from in it's a reward for the season that we just had. Whatever's in your future is in your future. It has to be an interestingly tough dynamic in a locker room to know that this guy is literally in the portal and leaving, and he's here playing a football game.
Right, because he's taking the spot of somebody that's coming back, and you want them to play.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
I see it. All right, Dr. Strangeborg wants to know, what new faces impressed you the most in the Liberty Bowl?
Well, obviously, James, because, I mean, his first catch as a Razorback was a 94-yard touchdown. That's a school record.
Yeah.
So that was dramatic, and he had some others. He got hurt. I don't know how bad he's hurt. I hope he's not hurt.
I think he's fine. He just a little helmet to the knee kind of thing.
Then how about Anton Junkaj?
Yeah.
Because Pittman had talked about this before the game. He'd said this guy has been hurt. We haven't really gotten to see what he can really do, but he's really got a lot of promise, but he's a senior, and they thought his eligibility was up. And then right before the bowl game, this announcement was made that the NCAA is going to give anybody that was in junior college an extra year, and that should apply to him. But they don't know for sure, but Pittman said, I'm sure anxious to see if we can get him back. So having him play like he did, and he got the sack, he was the only Razorback down lineman, or the only defensive lineman that got to their quarterback. I mean, that was the only sack of the game, and it turned out to be a safety. So, and you know, he had 2 or 3 other really good tackles. This guy he's good. He's really ferocious and tackles hard, and so I hope he's getting to come back.
Yeah.
And then the offensive lineman from Fort Smith, who, you know, you're a true freshman on the O-line, and look, That's the part. I thought Arkansas would lose. And when we did our pregame, I think I was the only one picked them to lose. I don't know if you remember that or not. But I picked them to lose by about 6 points because I just felt like there were too many holes. Yeah. And I really worried about their ability to run the ball, protect Taylor Green, and they had over 200 yards rushing. Now, I will say that Green did a lot of that on his own because Tech did go after him, and he just made them look like he was a matador and they were bulls. He was just going around them left and right. Taylor Green, to me, had his best game as a Razorback because he didn't have any turnovers. He had that one mistake, and you guys probably didn't see it, but on TV, Petrino, when he got to the sideline, I've never seen Petrino chew out a player since he's been back. He used to do that all the time when he was a head coach. He got in his face. He let him have it. They went over and sat down. He let him have it some more, and Green responded. From that point on, he played pretty much flawless.
Yeah. You're talking about Kobe Brantham, the offensive lineman from Fort Smith. Also, to just give a shout out, I think, to Brooks Edmondson, who was starting for the very first time at center.
Yeah.
And that has to be terrifying as a young guy. And now, hey, by the way, you're going to snap the football. Best of luck to you.
And hey, by the way, we did pretty well considering.
Yeah, exactly. All right. WV Hog fan, would you consider this season a success after being picked to finish 14th in the conference and winning only 4 or 5 games?
Yeah, there's been this issue all along of people saying this team is really not, for all practical purposes, not any better than last year's team. This is a silly statement, and it's made by a lot of people. First of all, you beat a top 10 team this year, a playoff team. You didn't do anything like that last year. Secondly, Auburn came here and embarrassed you in front of your own home fans. You went down there and beat them this year. That's a turnaround. Same thing with Mississippi State. Mississippi State comes up here and beats Arkansas. Arkansas goes down.
Worst game I've ever seen.
And Arkansas goes down there and beats them convincingly. So you have all of that. Then how about Missouri? Missouri blows the doors off of your team last year in front of your own fans. This year you go down there and you're one play away from beating them. It was close right there at the end. If Tesla makes that catch, and it was batted away on a great defensive play, but if he makes that catch, Arkansas wins that game with, I don't know, there was 6 seconds left or whatever. So come on. You made progress. You also qualified for a bowl game, and you won the bowl game. I don't get people that want to say there was no improvement this year. Now, that doesn't mean they will improve next year. I think it's going to be harder to win 6 games next year than it was this year because of all the things that they have to do now. I mean, the road games, road game at Tennessee, road game at Ole Miss, road game at LSU.
Yeah, and then you got to go to Memphis. So you're back at the Liberty Bowl
easy.
Stadium, and then you're playing Arkansas State in Little Rock.
Who won a bowl game. So, I mean, and then Notre Dame is your Power 4 non-conference game instead of Oklahoma State. So, I mean, you know, it's a tougher schedule.
Absolutely. It always seems that way. It just gets tougher.
I know.
When we don't think it could ever get tougher, it just does. All right, Hog Bosky wants to know if a family member who claims to be a Hog fan seriously thought Sam Pitman was totally unaware that Dazmin James is fast, should that person be remanded to the kids' table so that the adults can converse in peace?
Well, that's funny, but I don't know the family member, so maybe they really believed Pitman was being serious. Yeah. This is part of Sam's problem.
Yeah.
He's got kind of this personality where you can't tell sometimes that he's kidding.
Well, here's the deal. I think this is the thing, and I'm not trying to interrupt you. We sit in these press conferences and we hear Sam say it. When you read it on a tweet, you don't have any of that context of his mannerisms or his cadence or any of those things. So you just read a text and it's like, or a tweet, and it's like, you can't tell, there's no emotion behind it. So that's where the disconnect happens.
And again, you've got people also with an agenda that jumped all over that. And
we need to put in parentheses, joking.
Yeah. If they jumped all over that as proof that he's so goofy, he didn't understand that he had this fast guy on his team. You think he's unaware of the fact that this kid was the 100-meter champion in North Carolina in high school? 100-meter champion, state champion. He knew he was fast. Yeah. He was just joking about that.
Yeah.
So
it was a joke. It was very tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, man, I had no idea he was so fast.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. We don't live under a rock. We're aware. We're aware. Okay. Here is the next question. Pig's Feet asks, do you have a personal satisfaction that the Hogs not only won, but beat Texas Tech? Yes, how much bragging have you done?
No, there's no personal.
What?
No, there's not. Because
I was
here's
really hoping that you've been talking a lot of smack.
I've said before, I don't like it when Arkansas plays them because I'm going to be pulling for Arkansas, but I got so many friends that are Texas Tech fans. I feel bad for them when they lose a bowl game. Carol Ann Freeland, her older brother Billy Bob was in my graduating class, knew him for 12 years. Carol Ann lives 2 blocks up the street. She's one of my sister's best friends. She married a guy from Denver City that I played high school football against, a great guy. And we've sat down and to eat before in Lubbock at her house and talked about the times Denver City and Morton played each other. They're great people. They have a daughter that married a Texas Tech player a few years ago. They are huge Texas Tech fans. You think I'm happy that they lost and that Tech lost? And
there's not a little bit of you that just wants to kind of be like,
no.
Okay.
I would wish that the Arkansas and Texas Tech would not.
Not even for like fun.
No, I would hope they don't play. I hope it's a long time until they play again.
Oh man, I'd have like a little fun. Little fun.
I have enough.
Little bit.
I have enough respect. They didn't do a lot of bragging. They understood that Tech, for whatever reason, was the underdog in that, and the way they portrayed it to me in the build up to that game. Well, we're going to lose. I'm like, do you understand Arkansas?
Arkansas fans were thinking the same thing.
You know how many players Arkansas has missing? How many starters they have gone? Come on. So they didn't brag. They didn't try to rub it in. Hey, we're going to kill you or anything. It might have been different if they'd done that, but they don't do that.
Oh, okay.
They didn't do it when Mahomes beat them years ago. Remember when Mahomes just?
Oh no, I remember being at Razorback Stadium watching Patrick Mahomes just run all over everybody.
They never stopped him one time.
There was a girl that I had worked with previously in Abilene who was now in Lubbock covering Texas Tech, and we were talking, and she looked at me. She goes, "Alyssa, he's the real deal."
Yeah.
Because I remember being like, "Is this kid good?" And she's like, "Alyssa, he's the real deal."
Yeah, and they never. None of my friends ever rubbed that in about that.
That's okay. That's all right. All right. Anyway, since you don't talk any trash, Hot Dogger says, I was very disgusted with Carmona stepping on the Texas Tech player's ankle after the play was dead. He's lucky he wasn't called for a penalty. It was a dirty play.
Yeah, this has been all over the internet for 3 days now. And to me, I call it internet ping pong among the extremes because this is what these people love to do, whether you're one side of an issue or another. They like to argue extreme opinions that really, when the real thing is somewhere in the middle. So here's what happened from day one. A bunch of these people, and these aren't Texas Tech fans. I checked who some of these people were, and they're just general sports fans, from other parts of the country. Yeah. And it started almost immediately. This guy should be arrested. He should be prosecuted. He should be banned for football forever. I'm thinking, are you crazy? If you go and look at what happened, this is my take. Carmona looks, he sees where the guy's ankle is, he's in the pile, and he reaches over and he puts his foot down on top of his ankle and he presses down and then pulls up. He didn't stomp on it. He didn't put the full weight of his body on it. He just was sending him a little bit of a message that probably hurt a little bit. And some Razorback fans went back and found some plays in that game where this particular Tech player had undercut a couple of Razorbacks, Tesla, one of them, when they were carrying the ball. And so what I think was going on there is he was coming really close to going after their knees, undercutting players, which is a no-no, and he was just sending a message back to this guy. Is it good? No. You and I have discussed this. Carmona's got a problem. He gets in the game and just starts acting like a crazy person sometimes. He's gotten them some penalties that have allowed drives to keep going. He's going to get them beat one of these days, just like Skipper did one time against, we all like Dan Skipper, but he'd go nuts in games. And he got Arkansas beat against A&M one year in Jerry World with a dopey penalty.
Called back that Alex Collins touchdown.
Yeah, just because he was leg swiping a bunch of guys long after the Collins was already on his way. It didn't have anything to do with the play, but they called it back. So this is the same issue. Players, you don't want to take away their aggressive nature, but you've got to play smart. You got to be able to control.
You just can't do it.
Yeah.
Bottom line is you just can't do it. And the thing is, like, Fernando Carmona Jr. is like a big old teddy bear off the football field.
Off the field.
He just gets on the football field and
So they got to talk to him, and I hope they do. But this idea that he should be arrested, I mean, go jump in a lake. Go go find another issue to argue about.
Yeah, you just can't do it. So I'm sure he's had that conversation with Pitman.
Right.
Hog Redneck wants to know: is it just me, or have there been a lot more fighting in bowl games so far? Some I've talked to think it's another sign that players no longer respect the game, since it's more about money with players these days.
I think he's going overboard on that. I mean, how would we know? First of all, how do you know what causes somebody to fight during a game? I've noticed there've been some fights. I don't. It's not my perception that it's any more than usual. It's not like every game there's a big fight that breaks out. The only thing I would point to is the Miami game, where two of guys got into a fight with each other, teammates on the sideline, and they were throwing punches. Now, I've always had to laugh at players throwing punches when you're got helmets on and all that. I mean, what, are you going to hurt?
It's a whole other thing. We can go down. Like,
you're going to hurt somebody doing that?
You're going to hurt your own hand.
Yeah,
what you're going to do.
Probably break a hand. But that's a bad look. That's a sign that something's wrong inside that team when teammates are out there swinging at each other while a game's going on. But again, I don't know if that has anything to do with the transfer portal. It might just be a problem within the team.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, if one of them had gone out there and taken a swing at the guy that stopped playing, what was his name?
Oh, for Texas Tech?
No, for Miami.
Oh, Cam Ward.
Yeah, Cam Ward. If one of those Miami players had taken a swing at him, then you'd say, yeah, that's about the portal.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't think that's what was going on. I certainly don't know that it is.
All right, so next question. Fat, is that how we're going to do this?
Fat.
PH Fat, like that's a cool fat. Wants to know, do you believe the O-line is the biggest problem on offense? Is the O-line going to get the new faces needed to protect the quarterback?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
already being addressed.
I think Taylor Green's problems largely began with the offensive. He was running for his life all year long. Teams saw that, and every week when Arkansas played somebody, it was like, well, we got to come up with a blitz package because they can't block this for this guy, and he makes mistakes sometimes when he's running around. So I think the O-line was the biggest problem. They lost 3 starters off the O-line, but they've brought in 5 so far, and they may bring in another one, and I think every one of those are from Power 4 conference schools. They got a guy from Ole Miss, they got a guy from Oregon, they got a guy played a lot for Georgia Tech. So they've got another center that looks like he's going to be pretty good. I talked to Otis about this, and Otis told me that the coaches think that when this is all said and done, they'll have a better offensive line than they did last year, and that was their goal.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would say about that is when you're trying to do this with the offensive line, it's difficult because I think offensive linemen need time to work with each other.
Yeah.
And I think this is the one area where portal doesn't work very well. And I think that may have been part of the problem this year. They brought in all these guys out of the portal and they were starting, but you know, they just didn't seem to mesh together sometimes. So you're going to be doing the same thing next year. You got a bunch of new guys. Hopefully it'll work out better. But what I've always said about portal guys coming in, there's no way we can know until they play.
Right, exactly. All right, next question. Marty Birch Proxy wants to know, do schools assist or advise athletes in any way on their taxes since they have started getting paid, or are they on their own?
Schools can point them in the direction of someone that does that.
Yeah.
But they cannot do it for them. But I've never talked to anybody, but this is common sense to me. Wouldn't your NIL agent take care of that?
You would think.
I
or
mean,
at least, again, have someone who takes care of that.
I mean, you're making money
for
off
you.
this guy. You're going to let him get into tax trouble? That's idiotic. So I think most of the time your NIL agent knows somebody and says, hey, we're going to have to pay this guy to do your taxes because you don't want to end up in trouble when you spend all this money and now you got to pay taxes on it. So I think that's what's going on there.
Yeah, for sure. Baghdad Hog wants to say, I've heard you say that revenue sharing will equalize the playing field. Does that mean that collective will cease to exist? If not, schools with big collectives will still have an advantage.
Collectives are still going to be around, but here's the issue. Now, I've explained this over and over. I'm going to keep explaining it until we get into revenue sharing, but I'm only explaining what I've been told. That this revenue sharing thing is designed to separate paying of players to play football and paying players to do an NIL. You pay somebody to play football based on their ability to play football, and that's the way this revenue sharing is going to work. They'll get a budget for all of these sports, but say for football. And then the coaches will have to decide, okay, we're going to pay this guy this much, this guy this much, this guy this much, and it will be strictly on what value they add to the team. Now that's being done allegedly through NILs, but it's not supposed to be through NIL. An NIL is supposed to be, I'm a businessman, I'm a nonprofit, I'm a for-profit business, and I give you X amount of money for a service you provide to me because of your name, image, and likeness. You come in and you do some ads, or you speak in front of some people that are helped by a nonprofit or whatever. A true NIL, you at least get the equal value of what you're being paid. That company or individual business or whatever should at least get equal value of what they're paying, and hopefully make a little bit of a profit. I used this as an example last week. My nephew runs this, I'll just say, a merchandising shop, and he was approached by an agent of a former player, and he said, hey, this guy will come in here and he will sign autographs, and you're gonna, if you'll pay him several $1,000s. And he said, the only way I would do that is if I thought I would make that money in extra sales plus a little bit of extra, because I'm not just going to do it. Because he's not a booster. You know, he's a businessman, and that's what NIL is supposed to be. So what I'm being told is that the NCAA will, on these real high dollar NIL deals, they're going to come in and investigate any school that gives somebody $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. They're going to come in and say, okay, what does he do to earn this money? Well, he's going to do a whole series of personal appearances for this nonprofit. Okay, you think that's going to generate $3 million in extra revenue for this nonprofit? No way. It might get them $500,000. So you can pay them $500,000, not $3 million. That's what they'll do. Now, Courtney's been making the point, and she may end up being right, that they're going to get sued over this. That the players are going to say, you can't determine what the value of my NIL. There's no way to do that. Well, what I've been told is this company that they've selected is an expert in determining the real value of a service or a product. And they've been told the courts accept this, so we'll see.
Well, it's like any kind of insurance. The insurance company is going to say, okay, we think the value of said thing you want in insurance, and we know these days you can put insurance on whatever you want to, is X amount of money.
Right.
And you got to accept that. Like, it's hard to fight that with these companies and saying, okay, we'll insure your whatever for X amount of money, and this is what we think you're worth. I mean, players kind of deal with that right now on injury insurance.
Yes.
Like if you play in a bowl, and this was a big thing back before NIL, that if you play and something happens to you, you can get insurance that'll help kind of cover any kind of lost money you would make if it affects your draft.
But they're not going to say, oh, yeah, I would have earned $50 million in my career. Oh, really? No.
Yeah. No, and so that's the
not
thing.
realistic.
Is like, that's what you're looking at, is that kind of, okay, we think that this is the value that you bring to the table.
And
that's not a new concept.
And that's what's being told to me by people that are aware of what's going on behind the scenes right now, that paying players will be paid by the school, and each school will have a salary or a pool, a revenue cap. So Ole Miss can no longer offer a bunch of extra money that Arkansas can't offer. They all have to offer the same total. Individual players may make a little bit different, because that's a decision of the coaches. But overall, this school can't offer more money than this school. And then with NIL, again, whatever NIL deals you offer, even with a collective, it's going to be, what do they have to do to earn this money? Well, they do this. No, that's not worth that. And I was told that they think most NILs will be reduced by 60 to 70%.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's still just really interesting. No one really knows what's going to happen. Miami basketball coach Jim Larrañaga has retired from coaching, blaming NIL agents who he says are asking millions of dollars or more to bring a player or to keep a player.
Yeah, and his response was, this is not going away, I think was the response.
This is not going away.
That was the response. Okay, I understand his point, because what you've got here is a college basketball coach that apparently is not convinced that revenue sharing is going to do what people say it's going to do. Otherwise, he wouldn't have retired, because we're just a few months away from that happening. So he must think it's not going to work, or he wouldn't have just retired and given up basketball coaching.
They were also losing.
Well, and maybe that's what it really was. Maybe he just blamed it on that. But the implication is, if this guy is giving up his career and saying, I'm out of it, he must not believe this is going to work. Again, I like your explanation. We don't know what he's really doing here, but I just can't. Maybe I'm overly trusting, but when I'm talking to people that know what's going on with these people that are trying to make this whole thing happen, and we still have to get Congress involved. Tom Tuberville, who's a former, obviously, football coach at several different schools, including Alabama, he's all over this.
Auburn.
Auburn.
Whew!
And Texas
Be careful
Tech,
what you say.
he beat Alabama
Be careful
a lot.
what you say.
He beat Alabama several times and then finally lost to him once, and they fired him, which I thought was stupid.
Tough.
But the point is, Tom Tuberville is apparently all over this and advising all these senators and congressmen, this is what we need to do. And supposedly once the legislation is in place, and they're waiting for the Trump administration, I guess, to do all this stuff, but sometime this spring, then it's in place, then there's a legal, a law behind it, and then they hope it will back them up enough to where they will, whatever legal challenges they face, they will win in court, not lose in court.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Sarks asked, does the football program have a GM-type person responsible for NIL budgeting, or is it solely on the coaching staff? If there is such a person, who is it?
Sam Pitman, a couple of weeks ago, talked about the fact that they don't have somebody like that now. He said, when the season is over, I'm going to sit down with Hunter Yurachek. We've discussed this. We're going to discuss it and see what we think. But he also said, Pittman also said, I think we as coaches are fully capable of understanding and knowing how much value, this is what he said, we're fully capable of knowing how much value to apply to each athlete, so it's not like we don't know what to do. The argument against that, and you know this, is that coaches shouldn't be involved in this because
it's not about being capable. It's about it shouldn't be your responsibility.
Because the players end up getting mad at you when they should get mad at a GM type person, and then the coaches don't have that issue. So I don't know what they're going to do. The only reason I think a school might not do this is because this is happening right when you're going into this revenue sharing. And keep in mind, revenue sharing is about how much money you can generate inside your athletic department. So this is another salary you're going to have to add. What if you're paying this guy $300,000 a year or whatever? That's $300,000 that they can't spend on athletes. So they're going to have to come, well, they could, but they're going to have to come up with an extra $300,000 in order to pay this guy and still give these athletes whatever the maximum amount is you're allowed to pay. And this is the same thing that came up when we were discussing last week that Van Horn, not particularly excited about getting 34 scholarships when he knows that that doesn't mean he's going to get 34. It's just the NCAA allows 34 scholarships, but with all this pressure to come up with this money to pay for these football players, is Van Horn going to get extra scholarships? Well, what if he gets 10 instead of 20 more? And so, again, there are pressures, there are monetary pressures that are going to come more into consideration inside an athletic department like Arkansas's when they have to start coming up with this $22 million a year just to pay players.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, so let's switch gears. Honk Fan in J-Town says, I think the 12-team playoff committee got it wrong on the seedings. I don't like conference champs getting an automatic bye. They should be seeded by how good they are.
This is a popular opinion. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think you could go a little bit in that direction. But I don't like this idea that you would say, hey, there are 4 teams in the SEC better than this conference champion over here, therefore they should be seeded, or Big Ten teams or whatever. You've got to take into consideration the rest of the country. You can't just say, you're not part of our little cool club that we're the SEC or we're the Big Ten, and we're just leaving you out. We'll let you in, but you'll be these lower seeds. There's a compromise there somewhere, and hopefully they will come up with it, because I do understand what the complaint is. But I don't like the other side of that. I think we're not through with this bowls period and the playoffs. It may well be, when this is all said and done, that the SEC doesn't look so good right now. I mean, we've already seen A&M get beat. We've already seen Tennessee get embarrassed. So let's wait until the end of this thing before we start popping off about how good the SEC is and how this team should have been seated lower.
Yeah.
There ought to be a reward for winning your conference.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is about the 12 teams that they did pick and then seeding them 1 through 12. That way, like Clemson, or not Clemson, but you have a Boise State team that got a bye.
Yeah.
Did they deserve to have that bye? I don't know, but you could easily argue that Oregon got a bye, but like, do they need, you just have to have those kind of questions, and I think it would have been maybe a little more competitive had it actually been seeded 1 through 12.
In my opinion, I gave it last week, is the reason those games were non-competitive was because the home team blew everybody's doors off.
100%, a lot of this home field advantage had a big part to do with it. Yeah. I think that plays. It's not a one answer. I think there are a lot of factors that go into all of those things, and home field advantage was one of them. But I remember when they first kind of unveiled this whole thing, the top 4 conferences champions get a bye was only the next like 2 years or so, and then they're going to revisit it again. So it's not like this is set in stone. So they're taking, I think, these next 2 years or so and kind of learning exactly what this looks like, and then seeing if they need to reorganize the structure.
And you've got to understand that I've got pretty radical opinions about the SEC, for instance. I wish Arkansas had never gone into this league. I understand the money. I understand the prestige. It's a snobby bunch of teams that think they're better than everybody else. And their ultimate goal is to shut everybody out but the Big Ten and play their little game and tell everybody else to go away. I'd be perfectly fine if Arkansas was in the Big 12 right now. I think Texas should have stayed in.
Texas could win a national championship their first year in the SEC.
I know, but I'm saying if Texas has stayed in the Big 12 and Oklahoma stayed in, I'd rather Arkansas be in that one because it's all regional, and you got regional rivalries. Think about being able to go across 2.5 hours and play Oklahoma State, an extra half hour and go to Oklahoma. Think about what that would mean when their fans come here. Well, so it's not going to happen, and I'm not saying
regionality is out the window.
I know.
USC is over here playing Rutgers.
I know, and I'm not saying that ever will happen. I'm saying that those are my radical opinions on that. I've never been impressed with the SEC. I understood why Frank did it, but it's always been a bunch of snobs. Roy Kramer treated Arkansas okay when he was the commissioner. He's the one that invited him in, but when he retired, it's been nothing but up yours. You're not cool enough. You don't have a big enough TV market. Arkansas gets shafted on the schedule every year. They do it in basketball. They treat Arkansas like a bunch of second-class citizens, like they're Vanderbilt or something. And I would prefer a conference where everybody kind of gets treated the same.
Can't wait for the comments on that one. That's the way to end it, Mike.
Good.
Fire on this Monday. Let's go. That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. Fire them up next week. Bring in some more questions. We'll see you then.